9 of our series of sort of tutorials or live coding sessions on creating a website in Python using Django and Wagtail CMS. These sessions have been hosted on the Codebuddies.org platform. Codebuddies is a global community of code learners who help each other through conversations on Slack and peer-to-peer organized study groups and virtual hangouts. There seems to be about, one or so hangouts a day on various topics, algorithms, and I've been working with these Python Django hangouts for a while. And there are a whole bunch of study groups on many different topics, including job interview practice, test-driven design, Elixir language, Golang, Java, Rust, JavaScript, CSS, GitHub, Android, math, Ruby, PHP, game development, AWS, all sorts of things. There's pages of these, and many of them have a lot of people with recent activity. There's a lot of other ways to get in contact with the Codebuddies community. We have dedicated Slack channels. We have a community forum. The platform is open source on GitHub. There's a Medium publication and YouTube channel. The technologies we're using in brief are Python language, the Django web development framework, and Wagtail CMS. The project is a sort of the next generation of a magazine publication website for the organization Western Friend. It's a Quaker organization incorporated in California, and it serves the Quaker community in the western United States, hence the name. We've been focusing on rebuilding this website in Wagtail, and the place we started was the core, the magazine, which has been published online since around 2013. And the Friends Bulletin was the previous name, and it's been published in paper form going back to 1929, which is now online, hosted through the Internet Archive. They've digitized and scanned the entire back archive. It's really remarkable. So let's go ahead and take a look at today's changes. So we worked on 2 areas of the site: the homepage of the new site, which the old site is serving as a reference model. On the kind of second row of this site, there are 2 columns: featured articles and current issue. And featured articles needs a little bit more width to spread out, to sprawl out with this text, whereas the current issue is kind of narrow, so it can have fewer column widths. So we went ahead and replicated that. We'll look at the code in just a moment. I'm showing on the front end the changes for now. The main undertaking today was to split the magazine index page into 2 main sections: recent articles and recent issues and archive issues. So that took a lot of tinkering, and at the end we wanted also to have a grid layout so things look nice. So if we check out the magazine index page, you can see we were able, to succeed with that regard, and we even used some bootstrap markup to style these, some bootstrap classes to style these as cards. Okay, without further ado, let's take a look at the code. I'll try to be as brief as possible. It might be kind of fast in some of the sections, but basically the home page, it now has just 1 row. The homepage body right here, it didn't need to be wrapped in a row, and it was kind of actually acting up when I did that. So whittled it down to 1 row, and kind of was messing with the sort of breakpoints here. So these should sum up to 12, ideally. And basically, I realized that 7 and 5 was the best fit to keep this title from breaking and still give enough space for the featured articles text to kind of sprawl out. Other than that, there aren't any significant changes that I can think of on this homepage. So the magazine page, this is the kind of bread and butter of the work today and of the website in general. By default, we had pretty much every magazine issue that was published as a child of this magazine index page, which there should only ever be one magazine index page, meaning all magazine issues should be published underneath that. There's not quite a code constraint in place for that right now, but that's the general idea, and it's pretty unlikely that we'll end up with multiple magazine index page instances. So that said, in Wagtail, I think this comes out of Django, in fact, you can override the template context. Wagtail models are each linked automatically, magically, to a template having the same name. And when you render that template, you want to pass in some data, so you can use those. And we'll look at these templates in just a second. But this is the most important part of the code, where in just a few lines, we're able to get these two sets of magazine issues that should be mutually exclusive. So let's take a look. When you're overriding a context, you should always grab the context from the parent class and passing in the request. That way you have the existing page context. Then from there, we want to add a couple of fields to that. So it basically returns a dictionary. Oops. So these fields, there's a threshold where I should briefly explain. Western Friend wants the recent issues to be available primarily or in full form only to subscribers. That's a way they have a small revenue stream. That's their business model. It's a non-profit organization, but it still needs some profit, some revenue stream. So we want to have a threshold of around 6 months or 3 issues that are only available to subscribers in full form. Beyond that, though, everything is open to the public. You don't even have to sign in to read full issues in the archive and the deep archive as well. So we need to set a threshold, and because of the way Python, the solution I've come to in Python using a time delta, it only allows us to specify time deltas in terms of days, weeks, hours, minutes, or seconds, not months. So I can't just say 6 months. I think that's because of the variable length of months. Because time delta maybe is not looking at the exact months in the delta is so much as like the period, abstract period of, so days, weeks, those are constant in length. Hours, minutes, seconds, those have constant measures. In any case, 180 days seems to be a good threshold for the archive. So essentially we just define that by taking today's date and subtracting a time delta of 180 days. I pulled that out so we could change it if we get some edge cases where we're displaying like 2 archive issues or something like that. So then we just grab all the published issues, which is simple. You just grab all the objects that are live, so that means they're not in a draft state. And we've introduced a field called publication date, so we want to order those in reverse so the newest come to the top. This might not be a necessary step, but in any case, that's what I decided to do. Now we're going to add 2 new keys to this context dictionary, one for the recent issue, one for archive. And essentially, we're just using inverse logic here. For the recent issues, we'll say greater than or equal to the archive threshold, using the equal there to scoop up that minimum date. And for the archive issue, we'll just do less than the archive threshold. That way we don't actually scoop up the date and have some inadvertent kind of overlap on some, like 1 day a year or whatever. So that's it. Now with the context overridden and sent back to the template, let's take a look. The magazine index page now is a lot simpler, but it contains 2 sections, one for recent issues, one for archive issues. The recent issues has both these have row classes. The recent issues has a margin bottom row, and that's to keep it from bumping up against the archive issues. For some reason it was doing that, so I'm using Bootstrap for a margin bottom class, and you can add, I think, 4 M values is the way it is. Now this is the kind of cool part, and it's a learning of mine today, but basically once you've got these context variables into the template, you can iterate over them, because what we were returning here is actually query sets. These are This is a query set, and then it's now got a name, and so this is still, when we're filtering, it's still going to be a query set object. So we can iterate over all of those and pass these issues into an included template called magazine issue card. And that's what does the rendering here and allows us to do code reuse. It's really clean. And the nice thing about it is anything, I believe in the parent context, or at least in this iterator, which is the parent context in this kind of closure or block, is automatically available inside of this magazine issue card. So let's take a look at that. We needed to load the Wagtail core tags and image tags. Actually, we might be able to get away without the Wagtail core tags, but in any case, I've got them there. And in order to display a grid, we need to divide 12 by the number of sort of items we want to display, something that's equally divisible ideally. So on large screens, we want to show 4 items wide if they're available. Whoops. On small screens, let's do 3 items wide. So for that, on small screens, you just divide 12 by 4 to get 3. On large screens, you divide 12 by 3 to get 4. And for each card, we're adding a margin top of 4 M values. And what that helps to do is that when this wraps, the next row is actually bumping up against the bottom of the previous row. And since we didn't want to put margin, wait a minute, I should maybe have done the margin bottom. Well, darn, learning stuff each time. In any case, we just need to put some margin between these. And that's a small fix I might switch later. So now, the cool thing, we're actually using Bootstrap card class. And essentially, we want the card to link, this needs to be indented, it's throwing me off a little bit, to the issue. So we do that in 2 places. First, we do it around this cover image, which is done with the Wagtail image template tag. We kind of made the scale a little bit larger and added a class directly in that tag, card image top, meaning it's going to kind of put it aligned along the top part of the card. This H100 turned out to be necessary so that the card takes up 100% of the horizontal width. The image takes up 100% of the horizontal width of the card, and it doesn't scrunch the aspect ratio of the image. So that gave us this full correct aspect ratio for each of these vertically oriented cover photos. That took me a little bit of figuring out. It was a good breakthrough. After that, we have the card body, which is essentially the stuff down here. This is the code that was previously there. It just shows it gives a link to the issue by title and these publication dates. Now we've cleaned them up a little bit. One of the things that you'll notice here is that this card is a little bit taller than the others. It's because this on expansion has kind of flowed into instead of breaking in the middle of the word, well, in any case, it's wrapped to the next row. Similarly, dates, we're doing that because dates have different numbers of letters in them, and so some of these would wrap to the next row because February or whichever date was causing it to do that, September, October. So we just changed the date format to be the 3 letters, and so that reduces the number of cases of what will have irregular card heights. I decided not to truncate the title. We'll just have to kind of cut losses there and allow our grid to be imperfectly aligned, but mostly it looks pretty clean. In any case, we can bounce back out now to this index, and we just repeated that twice so we didn't have a whole bunch of code duplication. That's about it. That's the summary of today's work. Again, this has been a Hangout, part of a Hangout series on Codebuddies.org, and we really hope to get you involved and find something if you've got any personal projects you're working on, or if you want to kind of collaborate on somebody else's project, or if you've got something you can help other people with along their learning journey. You're exactly the kind of person we'd like to get involved here. Again, there's a lot of different channels, and the main entry point is Codebuddies.org. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time and have a great day.